Okay. So you can see like, and this is kind of what I recommend doing is first like setting up uh, your code base and getting things running just like in the terminal, just like normally on your desktop, and then move that and really you want to perform those same steps within the Docker environment. So, this is the Flask Docker Lab. What we're asked to do, I think, is like to set up our Flask application to then essentially like be able to reach it, Dockerize it, and then be able to actually make a request to our Flask API. So let's try to do that. If we move here, so here, we have, this is like where the lesson is, and we'll cd into users. And then we can see we have this requirements.txt. If I do ls-a, I'll make this bigger. I just want to make sure there's really not any hidden files. This is the only thing that's Jupyter kind of crap. And then if I look at the project, okay, this has my init.py and the config.py. And then we can open up the code base. In the init.py, you can see we have this, the Flask app is defined there. We have this route for users that then just returns, a little bit of JSON. If we run it, like we could run it, I guess, this way by doing Python 3 project dunder init.py, and that boots it up, right? And then we can like just confirm it by going here and then going to /users. Okay, right? Because that makes a request to the /users route, and that returns this list of, this dictionary that I guess has a list in it. What I think we asked you to do though was to use like this Flask run argument, right? So instead you do like Flask run. The way this works, you can see it with the error message, is that it says could not locate a Flask application, use the Flask app option, the Flask app environmental variable, right? So let's look up the Flask app environmental variable. What you have to do, I think you all know this, what we have to do is actually define what is the file that contains my application, all right? And then it will essentially perform these lines of app.run for us, okay? So what I need to do is we can delete this. Now we deleted the line to say app.run. And then if we do Flask run, we're going to need to set an environmental variable. So we can do that. I think you could do like export, right? Flask app equals, and then you could just set the path. If it's like dunder init, project dunder init.py. Like you could set it through the terminal. I think a better idea is to use like a .m file. This way it's like you don't need, like the user doesn't need to set up their environment. It's codified, right? We've kind of, it's called like, I've mentioned this before, right? Configuration as code, right? It generally makes it more automatic if we just turn this into code. So create a .m file, and then we'll do Flask, and we'll set the environmental variable here. And relative to this .m file, it's project / dunder init.py, right? So now let's just take a look. Yeah, so here's my .m file. From this directory, we'll run Flask run, and then it will look for project init.py, and we can see this is running, right? Even though we don't have that app.run anymore. All right. So now let's just confirm we can do the same thing. Just go to /users. This seems to still work, right? So we're good. So we just set this up locally, right? And what we'll want to do now is kind of perform the same steps in Docker. Questions so far, right, with kind of how we worked with Flask? I don't even know if we need these lines. I wonder. Let's comment this out and see if it works. Maybe we do. It doesn't look like we need them, right? So these lines were the load.end, but it looks like, somehow Flask might be automatically calling that, I guess, even without these two lines. Just confirm again. Yeah, it's fine without them. So if we don't want to include those lines, it works fine. Yeah, and now we essentially want to move this same procedure over to Docker. All right, so the first step is let's create a Docker file. I'm creating it like at the same level as the rest of my configuration. Okay, and then remember, like with a Docker file, we're always starting with the word from, and then we end with like a command. So it's like start with our base image, our starting point, add some meat, like some stuff in the middle of our sandwich, and then end with like, what is the purpose here? Like, why are we doing this in the first place? We're doing this so that we can easily boot up our Flask server. So the image I asked you to work with was this thing, Python 3.7.2 Alpine. And what I mentioned was it's good just to like get familiar with it first, right? So what you can do, I think I've already done it, but we can pull down the image and essentially explore it. All this thing does, I think, is it just starts with installing Python on your computer or on your. It gives you like on your system. If we run it, so we docker run -it. So a lot of people try to like run this thing just like this, and then they're like, where's the container? Remember the way Docker works. It's this Python. Let's see if we can find the image somewhere. This was it. This is pretty close to it. Okay. So you can see what the command, right? This is the last line of this Docker image, this Python 3.7, right? All it does, it runs after installing Python, I'm guessing. Maybe this is the last line. Yeah, I guess the command is just Python 3. So imagine that like you run Python 3, and I think then it's just like done, right? Like it has run Python 3, but it doesn't need to do anything else. So after it achieves that task, right, our container dies. All right, so I wish I could actually see the like Docker file. Is there a way? Anyway, so that's the reason why when you do like Docker run this thing, it is running for a second. Like there is a container booted up, but then after the command gets achieved, remember Docker will just like kill the container. So if we want to kind of hold on to this thing, we can do Docker run and then override the last command with something of our choosing, like bash, right? We could have done ls. So this boots up a container and then like lists the contents in the image. But what we want to do is do bash, I think, and then we want to stay connected. Now this is going to break. Let's see it break. All right, and what does it say? Bash executable file not found in path. So bash is like a more easy to use like command or like I guess language. It's just more easy to use. It's what we have like on our Linux system, but we can instead use sh, which is like the shell. It just has a little bit less, but it's what we have installed on this image. So instead of do bash, we'll just put an sh at the end, and we can actually interact. So now we can do ls. We can cd, right? I told you cd into the user, and then inside here is this source, right? And then let's just I like to do like pwd just to see from the absolute path, where are we? So we're at user/source, and we want to effectively like make a directory called app, I think, and that's where like application will go. So, all right. So let's do this. So from Python 3, I think we can then set the working directory. Like you kind of imagine, like what would you do in the terminal? Well, like cd into user source app, right? Because this both switches the directory and makes a new one. So now we're at this user source app, and now what do we want to do? Well, now we want to, like, I guess we can already end with command. Let's just put this here. We'll do flask run for now. All right, so this is the starting point. This is what we want to build to, and then this is all the steps to be able to, all right, to be able to actually run this thing. So, okay, so first thing we did was we created a new directory. Then we probably want to move some stuff into it. So let's move the .env file, copy .env into the current directory, which is this directory. Okay, and then we can, let's do this. We'll copy project, and then we'll copy into the current directory. Yeah, and let's just do that. Now let's exit out of here, and let's do docker build -t. I'll call this like Flask. I don't know what images I have. Image ls. Yeah, okay. I'll call this docker build -t sample flask dot. All right. So this will build our new image, right? This is our build context. And this build context thing is important because when we say something like copy over the .env file, which we said here, it means to do that from the current build context, right? This is relative to the build context, which we specify when we do docker build -t sample flask and then dot. All right. So we'll build it. I like to explore it at this point. So let's do docker run -it sample flask sh, I suppose. Okay, so we're in this directory, and here's our .env file. Oh crap, and look how much it copied. So this is kind of weird. Why did it copy this stuff? It did so because we said copy project, but we said, I guess, just copy the contents of project into the current directory. That's kind of messy, right? We have all this crap here in there. What we could do instead is say, like, copy it into the project directory, right? Now we'll have this user source app project, and this content will go inside a project directory. So this is why I like to do this, right? Like, this is the point, is like build it and then explore. So let's exit out of here, rebuild it. We're good. Okay, and now let's just re-explore. Okay, now if you look, we have the .env file here, and it looks like we did